Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. And today's always fun for me because I am back with Dr. Louis Profeta. And it's not only does Dr. Louis Profeta know everything that's happening because he works in an ER, but he's also fun. And, sometimes irreverent, but not here. Not here so much. Always irreverent. Okay. So first of all, I want to just say that, and you and I were talking about this beforehand, that there's almost no other place where somebody, an ER doc, sees kind of everyone, right? Like you've got diversity in rural, in urban, and suburban, and socioeconomic diversity. And, there's people who are making assumptions because of who they see in their office as a therapist or whatever else they're doing. But that's self-selective.
Absolutely.
And you are seeing all of America coming through your ER. So would you agree that you are in a unique position to tell us what is going on with teenagers today?
Yeah, I think so. I think we are the canary in the coal mine. I mean, every problem that, shows up in society, we've already known about months in advance, if not years in advance. We see these problems coming from a much farther away distance than most anybody else does. So nothing really surprises us. Once it hits mainstream media, we've already been dealing with these issues for months, if not years on end. So yeah, it is the most, from diversity standpoint, whether it's religious, whether it's cultural, whether it's socioeconomics, whether it's health. I mean, from horribly disabled, infants to Alzheimer's patients. We see every single facet. So it all shows up here.
Okay, so we particularly talk about teenagers to parents of teenagers. And so, maybe there's always worry about it, but right now there just seems to be so much worry about our kids post-pandemic, if we're that, whatever is going on. What would you say is coming through the door in a way that you're surprised by?
Well, I'm not surprised by anything, okay, because it's all been coming to the doors again for months. But if I were to bring something to your attention, the level of mental health related issues involving teenagers is at a level that I've never seen. It's epidemic in its scope and breadth. And what's also concerning is that we have nobody to send these people to. I mean, it's one thing to be a wealthy suburban family where you can, maybe get a cash only therapist to see your kid, but getting people tied in through insurance, et cetera, is almost impossible these days. Unless you're frankly suicidal, it's almost impossible to get you admitted to, from a psychiatric standpoint. So the level of anxiety and depression is as high as I've ever seen it. I've never seen it like this. I think this is probably, every generation complains about the generation, coming after them as being, lazy or unmotivated or anything like this. But we're pretty much all the same generations in terms of the way we think after the greatest generation. Once the greatest generation from World War II showed up, I mean, we're all pretty much cut from the same mold after that time. But what I am worried about is that this seems to be the least resilient generation that I've ever experienced, or at least resilient group of teenagers. And I think COVID has a lot to do with it. I think that socialization and that shutdown for 2 years has really prevented them from coming out onto their own and learning resiliency. And then you throw in all the sort of what I would call outraged nation. Everybody feels like there's so much outrage about everything, whereas people just need to, especially with our young people, we just need to allow them a chance to be kids and to be young and to not be swept up in all the social nonsense that is going on, and allow them to find the causes that are near and dear to them, find their own sacred cows, so to speak, instead of forcing our sacred cows onto them, because most of these young people do not have the intellectual capacity yet to process all that information, and we're doing them an incredible disservice in that part. And we're seeing it manifested in our emergency departments.
Okay, so teenagers are coming in. You are able to see that there's a mental health crisis and that something needs to happen with this kid. What do you do when you can't? I mean, what if you're the parent in the emergency room and you say, well, they need to get some serious help, but I don't know. I don't have a bed for them, right? Like, what do you tell
Yeah,
those?
we get that all the time. I mean, we will have, we've had some of our really wealthier hospitals in Indianapolis, for example, that have cut down their social services coverage dramatically. We don't even have in-house social services like we used to in the past. We used to be able to get psych social workers to come in and see these patients. And this is a national problem. There's no way I can sit and talk with these kids for 2 hours, 3 hours on time. We're doing some telemedicine, telepsych related stuff where we have counselors at, for example, the stress center in Indianapolis that will get online and do assessments. But we hope that we can get social work in to see them. They do a psychiatric assessment on them. The big thing we're worried about primarily is suicidality or homicidality. Are these people thinking about killing themselves? Are they thinking about harming others? Or is it just a cry for help, wanting some therapist help? And again, since this is generational, so many of these parents before them do not have these coping skills in dealing with mental health issues before. So we're seeing people with mental health issues giving birth to kids with mental health issues, giving birth to kids with mental health issues, and it becomes this sort of cycle of, he needs a therapist or he needs medications. Well, guess what? Now the resources have changed, which means that we have to self-reliant, self-coping skills too that we are failing miserable at. And that's why when I talk about resiliency, a lot of this stuff doesn't really require a quick run to a therapist or run to a medication. It requires sort of behavioral modification and ability to be confident and ability to work to manipulate yourself in an environment that may not always go your way. And we've got to give those tools back to our kids. But getting back to your question, is that—
Wait, let me just interrupt because someone put in the comments, not resilient. Oh my God, they've sustained so much. So what does resilience mean?
Well, it means being able to, it's one thing to be able to survive being locked down with COVID, but it's another thing to be able to survive with your mental capacity and your ability to be happy intact and to be able, a lot of people survive, horrible illnesses and horrible downtime, but some of those people, it impacts them mentally for the rest of their lives. And so, that's what I mean by resiliency, to be able to bounce back, to be able to come back strong, to be happy, to be, productive, to be resourceful. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So, online, all of these online mental health, I can't think of any of the names of them, but they're providing healthcare through a platform. So are you seeing those as being valuable?
You mean telehealth? Like telehealth?
That would be the word, telehealth.
Yeah, I would. In fact, I'm doing some of it. I'm doing some of it with Hippo Health, and I'm doing sort of a niche environment where we're dealing with college students mostly that want to talk with a healthcare professional. So yeah, I think it's completely a completely valid way of doing it, and it seems to work. And if you can get access to a therapist through telehealth, whatever mechanism works, absolutely. If it works for you, go ahead.
Okay. Someone asks, what are some of the mental health symptoms? What other mental health systems are you seeing other than suicide ideations or attempts?
Drug abuse, especially marijuana, Xanax, fentanyl, alcohol. One of the worries that I have, especially with marijuana, sort of the proliferation of marijuana, you realize a lot of these young people are self-medicating with marijuana. Marijuana is the new alcohol of this generation. And studies really do show that it interferes with neuropsychiatric development. So there may be a short-term release of anxiety or depression, but it probably interferes with neuropsychiatric development up until maybe age 25 or so. So people that sort of poo-poo marijuana as being just completely harmless, it really isn't harmless in this adolescent population. And a lot of them, like I said, are self-medicating. A lot of them go on to develop a condition we call cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. And we see probably three.
Wait, what is that? What is that?
In our big ER, in our trauma center here in Indy, we probably see 3 or 4 young people come in every day with violent vomiting for hours on duration. And it's all caused by marijuana compounds.
Wow.
And So it's not completely harmless, but it's everywhere. It's sort of the social culture of the day, and so drug and alcohol abuse related issues.
Wait,
Uh,
let me ask you one more question about marijuana because it's so mainstream right now, and our kids think that it's like drinking wine, and you drink wine, so why can't I do marijuana? What when they come into the ER, is it because they're throwing up, or are there other psychiatric?
there's other psychiatric stuff too. We'll see psychosis related to it.
Wow,
Yeah,
from marijuana.
yeah, absolutely. And then a lot of the gummies too are starting to be laced even with fentanyl. So we've got to keep them away from vaping marijuana or marijuana products. We've got to keep them away from the gummies. If they're going to use it, they need to probably just use it the good old fashioned way. But the trouble is that our generation, when we think of weed, we think about weed like 1982 weed or 1975 weed. It's not the same. It's 10 times more potent, 10 times higher levels of THC. It has much bigger impact, neuropsychiatric development, psychoses, and a whole host of other problems. So, Greg Gutfeld has a line in his book, The Gutfeld Chronicles, where he says, "Don't buy weed, buy a suit." And what he's getting at is that try to encourage your kids to smoke weed when they make it. Okay, when they've been educated, when they got a future. But we're doing them a disservice by just pretending that it's completely innocuous.
Well, I mean, I think the harder thing is convincing our kids because you know how much control you have over your teenager. You say,
Sure.
don't do it. So it's complicated when they too believe that it's innocuous. And
Absolutely. And this is one of the issues when I travel, Susan, I travel all over America. I speak on college campuses all over America on these issues. And if I stand in front of this group of college kids and tell them not to smoke weed, I'll completely lose my credibility. If I sit up and tell them it's dangerous. Is it dangerous? Not from a standpoint that it's not going to kill you immediately, but will it decrease productivity? Yeah. Will it decrease the chance you'll be able to accomplish your life goals? Yeah. Does it open a whole lot of doors in your life? No. Those things they can wrap their heads around. And that's where the conversation needs to start.
Okay, so one mom says, I'm assuming it's a mom. I knew it, and the major risk currently is the flood of fentanyl that is being introduced into the illegal drug supply. So that one, what do we even do with that?
Well, and this is the thing, like I said, when I go to the college campuses, I don't care about the weed as much as I care about the fentanyl. And we're seeing your kids use fentanyl. And every one of your kids in the next 5 years is going to know somebody that has died of fentanyl. And probably half of them know somebody already. It's going to kill 70,000 people this year.
And not because someone on purpose takes fentanyl, but because something is laced with it?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna change your nomenclature there. Okay, because here's the simple fact. Nobody accidentally overdoses on these drugs. You have to make a conscious decision to step across that threshold and engage in that behavior for a first time. So if you're taking a bar of Xanax and you think it's a bar of Xanax and it turns out to be fentanyl and you die from it, you didn't accidentally overdose on fentanyl. You died of drug abuse. And, what's the world coming to when you can't trust your own drug dealers? But that's the reality of the situation. If any of these kids are using pills in any regards like this, they're engaging in reckless, dangerous drug abuse situations, and they're more likely to die from your kid from taking a pill that somebody gives them at a party than dying from getting shot at a party. So everything from Molly, or ecstasy, is counterfeited as fentanyl. Most of the Xanax we're seeing on college campuses is fentanyl. The oxycodones are fentanyl. We're even seeing fentanyl in marijuana gummies and in vaping products. There's stories about people buying cocaine online and they snort it, and it's fentanyl. On New Year's Eve, I had 3 adults from the same party that came in all overdosed on fentanyl that all thought they were snorting cocaine.
Which in and of itself is an ironic kind of story.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, but which is why I'm sort of torn about the whole weed pill thing. If your kid smoking weed is as bad as it gets, then you're okay, which is why we have got to be on this sort of this idea that these kids cannot pick up pills. They cannot pick up pills. We don't see old heroin addicts. They all die. We don't see old fentanyl addicts. They all die. And you just can't be doing it. and it just takes literally one tablet of fentanyl to kill you. One.
We were just at our kids' college campus, and the amount of alcohol was overwhelmingly unnerving. Like, in fact, I wish I could take my kid home. So we talk about drugs, and we want to talk to our kids about not taking pills that haven't been prescribed to them, and not buying pills from an unknown, what, all those things that could get you dead. But alcohol, are you seeing a lot of that in the ER?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about this recently. We don't see as much alcohol-related motor vehicle trauma as we used to do because of ride sharing. People are much more likely to Uber when they're drunk. In the olden days, obviously, they would still drive. So it's funny. We don't see as much alcohol-related drunk driving. More people are smoking weed. And when they drive smoking weed, they drive 5 miles an hour. So they typically don't get in car accidents. Alcohol-related stuff, certainly we're seeing a lot. And we're seeing a lot of rapes that happen. And, we talk with young people again on college campuses that alcohol does two things. It increases the likelihood that you'll become a victim of a sexual crime, and it increases the likelihood that you will become a victimizer in a situation like that because of the way it interferes with your ability to sort of make smart decisions. So, yeah, we still see a ton of alcohol. I don't have a good answer about how to curb that. I don't see, and again, from a clinician standpoint, I don't see any problem introducing your kids to alcohol at an earlier age and teaching them responsible drinking. Better you do that than somebody teaching them to shotgun a beer through a funnel or drinking multiple shots of hard alcohol. But I'll do these video conferences with Hippo Health students, and we'll talk about their drinking, and I'll say, well, you drink? And they'll go, yeah. I said, well, how much you drink? Well, I only drink on the weekends. Well, give me an idea how much you drink on the weekends. I don't know, maybe 10 drinks in a night. That's a lot of alcohol. And then you go, well, what are you drinking? Well, like maybe shots and vodka and soda. That is a ton of alcohol. You're talking about 20, 25 hard drinks a week. And that's how you become an alcoholic. That's how you end up falling and hurting yourself. But their perception of what constitutes heavy drinking is really out of skew to what it really is. And so we have to have those discussions, and we have to start teaching them early.
It's so culturally embedded into college campuses that it's like, maybe we shouldn't be sending our kids to college.
Well, but I've written articles about that, and I actually think that it's probably smart not to let your kids right now go to college. I really love hearing parents that say, you know what, I think our kid's graduating from high school, but we're going to hold off for about a year and let them grow up, let them get a job, let them work in construction or work in a nursing home or wait tables, give them a chance to sort of develop their own sense of self. Because it's always the freshmen that cause the real problems. Because again, they're not socialized well. They're trying to impress people. That whole fear of missing out mentality. There's a huge gap between the mental age of somebody who's a senior in college versus somebody who's a freshman in college. It's about as broad as a senior in high school versus a seventh grader. That's about the distance in terms of sort of sense of self.
I think even COVID has made that even more pronounced.
Absolutely.
Like a gap year was always a smart move, but right now, the kids who are graduating right now went through like real trauma of COVID during their high school.
Absolutely. But you don't solve that trauma by throwing them into college and throwing them into the mix when they're not ready emotionally, because there are people that will take advantage of that naivety. There's evil people everywhere. So, and they exist on college campuses too.
Yeah. All right. So we covered mental health. We covered drugs and alcohol. Anything else? Not that that's plenty to worry about.
Yeah, there's a lot. But I think that one of the things that I don't want to say get concerned about, but parents will say to me, my kid's a good kid. He's captain of the lacrosse team. He's get good grades and all that. They'll tout all these different accomplishments as a way of showing that they're ready for college. that's not the measure. The measure is, do they have the strength of character to say no? And a lot of that kind of behavior that we attribute as being really sort of, I want to say maybe high productivity or high performance kind of behavior, also may mask a need of needing to be socialized, needing to be within the mix of a whole bunch of people constantly and having accolades. And I would be much more confident about the kid that doesn't need to be in every event, that can stand by himself and read by himself and go for a walk by himself, him or herself, and keep themselves occupied and can visit grandma and can, doesn't have to feel that need to always be a part of what everybody else is doing at any given time. But just have that heart-to-heart talk with your kids coming out of high school. Give them the opportunity of not going to school immediately. College is always going to be there. Quit comparing your kids to everybody else's kids, and they'll be a lot happier.
Okay, this is so scary, but also so informative. And as always, Dr. Louis Profeta, thank you so much for your time and for the good work you do and for sharing it with us.
And if your kid's college wants me to come out and talk, get some parents together, or the fraternities or sororities, and I'll come out. God, I've been from Oregon to everywhere, from Oregon to Texas to Mississippi to Kentucky to New York to I don't know how many dozens and dozens of universities. So it's fascinating talking to your kids and getting to know them and hearing, what makes them tick and what scares them. It's really interesting stuff.
And you're changing the world one college at a time.
I don't know. I'm doing my part. Hopefully it's making a difference. I don't know.